George Soros is an 87-year-old billionaire, who has been at the center of many conspiracy theories promoted by both right-wing nationalists and religious fundamentalists all across the world in recent years. Many on both the far right and center-right across the globe view this man as the root of all evil. Ranging from Republicans and Trump supporters in the United States, to right-wing European nationalists, to Islamic fundamentalists and dictators in the Middle East, to Russian propaganda, to even the Israeli and Brazilian government. He has been blamed by the right wing for plenty of things, such as the migrant crises that is happening in Europe and America, along with the wars that are happening in the Middle East. And ultimately he has been framed as an evil satanic atheist who is trying to destroy the world and establish a one-world government. Just like the cultural Marxism myth, he is basically a scapegoat for right-wingers everywhere. But is George Soros really as evil as these conspiracy theorists on the right make him out to be? Are the claims surrounding this old billionaire really true? Or are they just lies and exaggerated myths made up by right-wing propaganda to find a scapegoat? That's what we're going to be reviewing today. Let's take a look at some of the untrue claims surrounding George Soros. Untrue claim number 1, George Soros is a Zionist. White nationalists and Islamic extremists always like to smear everyone they don't like as Zionists regardless of what their views on Israel actually are. And George Soros is no exception to those smears. According to many on the far right in both Europe and the Middle East, George Soros is an evil Zionist who wants Israel to dominate the Middle East and topple the Muslim world through Western wars and military coups. Many Muslims and white nationalists alike have scapegoated him for the Arab offspring and the conflict happening in Syria. In 2017, the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khomeini even blamed George Soros for attempting to interfere in the 2009 Iranian elections, and labeled Soros as a wealthy U.S. Zionist merchant. And the Turkish right-wing President Recep Tayyip Erdogan even accused George Soros of trying to divide and destroy nations and has blamed him for protests in Turkey. But of course, none of these accusations are true because George Soros isn't even a Zionist. George Soros funds pro-Palestine movements such as B'Tselem and Breaking the Silence, along with the group J Street, which is a moderate pro-Israel group that wants Israel to make peace with its neighbors. George Soros is not some warmongering Zionist who wants to destroy the Muslim world. He supports a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine, and he has a history of funding liberal movements in Israel to try to make the country more secular and tolerant. He is heavily demonized by Israeli propaganda for being an anti-Semite due to his support for Palestinian rights movements, and he has even been attacked by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In conclusion, just because someone is Jewish and rich does not mean that they are a Zionist. Don't judge a book by its cover. Untrue claim number 2, George Soros is a communist. Imagine being so red-pilled that you believe that a rich billionaire capitalist is secretly a communist. Many on the right wing tend to have this very simplistic worldview that anyone who doesn't agree with them is some anti-Western communist who wants to destroy the West. And of course, George Soros is no exception to these smears. What people on the right don't seem to know, however, is that George Soros used to fund anti-communist and pro-democratic activists in the Soviet Union and other Eastern European countries such as Hungary. According to TheAtlantic.com, in 1984, he established a foundation in Hungary to cultivate the shoots of liberalism growing beneath communist frost. His philanthropy provided copying machines, for instance, that allowed anti-communist activists to print Samis. Literature. After the Eastern Bloc in Europe collapsed, Soros-funded foundations nurtured in pro-democracy institutions in nations throughout Eastern Europe, paying for travel grants for students, supporting watchdog organizations that promoted good governance and human rights, and seeking to protect vulnerable and marginalized populations such as the Roma. If anything, George Soros helped contribute to the fall of communism and Eastern Europe peacefully transitioning from the socialist dictatorships they were to the democracies that they are today. If he truly were a communist like the right think he is, he never would have funded such programs against the Warsaw Pact during the final years of the Cold War. Actions speak louder than smears. Furthermore, what people don't seem to know is that originally in the 20th century, all of the George Soros conspiracy theories were originally first promoted by left-wingers in the United States who were against globalization. And that originally the right wing in America was also on good terms with George Soros during those times and considered him an ally and an anti-communist freedom fighter. What caused the Republican Party to hate Soros was in the early 2000s when Soros opposed the Iraq War and started to fund Democrat politicians to defeat George Bush. This then brings me to my next point. Untrue claim number 3, George Soros controls the United States government. This is a made-up claim that has no evidence to back it up. As the saying goes, what can be asserted without evidence, can also be dismissed without evidence. Many right-wing Americans like to believe that they are fighting this war against George Soros, and that the only way to defeat him is to vote Republican and make sure Democrats never get elected into power again. But there are many things about this claim that don't make any sense. Like if George Soros was so powerful that he controlled the American government, and if he only wanted Democrats to be in power, then wouldn't he prevent Republicans from ever rising to power? As mentioned earlier, George Soros opposed the Iraq War and funded the Democratic Party to prevent George Bush from getting re-elected. He donated a total $27 million to defeat George Bush, which in the end went to waste because Bush got re-elected. If George Soros really did control the American government, then I'm pretty sure George Bush never would have gotten re-elected and the Iraq War never would have happened. Let us also not forget that George Soros opposes Donald Trump and supported Hillary Clinton during the 2016 American elections. It is estimated that he donated more than $16 million to groups supporting Hillary Clinton in order to defeat Trump. And yet despite spending this much money and despite supposedly controlling the American government, his puppet candidate still lost to a reality TV show host. If George Soros really did control the American government, wouldn't he have successfully prevented Trump from rising to power? Wouldn't he have used his expensive wealth to rig the elections? Or have Donald Trump impeached by now? For someone who supposedly controls the United States government and who is trying to prevent Republicans from ever rising to power, he sure doesn't seem to be doing a very good job at it. If George Soros really did control the US government, George Bush would never have had a second term as president and Donald Trump would not be the current president of the United States. You'd have to be completely delusional to believe otherwise. Untrue claim number 4, George Soros funds Antifa. Another made-up claim that has no evidence to back it up whatsoever. As I said earlier, what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. Now George Soros does in fact fund and support some progressive movements and even centrist movements. But Antifa is not one of them. A list of movements that George Soros actually supports will be linked in the description. Furthermore, what people don't seem to understand is that Antifa is not an organization with a funding structure. Rather, Antifa consists of small groups of protesters without any real connection to one another, sometimes operating for a single day, sometimes for a single week, sometimes for a single month or year. They are not funded by billionaire capitalists. They are just some radical millennial students who are gathering together to fight what they believe is fascism. Did I also happen to mention that Antifa members tend to usually be anarchists and communists? And as we've seen earlier, George Soros does not support communism. What kind of far-left anarchists get funded by rich billionaire capitalists who are against them? Untrue claim number 5, George Soros wants a one-world government.
Gee, mate, what do you want to do tonight? The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
As usual, it wouldn't be a conspiracy theory without fear-mongerings about a new world order. Just like the Illuminati and the Freemasons, George Soros is believed to be part of a sinister plan to take over the world and establish a one-world government. Of course, just like the previous two claims, there is no evidence that proves that he wants this. And to repeat myself one last time, what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. Now it is true that in the past that George Soros has advocated for a quote-unquote new world order. But it's not what these conspiracy theorists make it out to be. The new world order that George Soros advocates for is simply nothing more than a reformation of capitalism through government regulation. According to BusinessInsider.com, George Soros believes that the world is heading for a second Great Depression. In order to prevent it from happening, he advocated for 3 solutions. Those 3 solutions include, a common treasury for the Eurozone, putting major banks under European Central Bank direction, and cheap debt refinancing for countries like Italy and Spain. This is what his vision of a quote-unquote new world order is. It is simply nothing more than a reformation of capitalism to prevent a second Great Depression. The article even goes further by explaining that he also opposes alliances made between governments and private businesses, opposes the United States being the world's leading superpower, and he also opposes unregulated capitalism. Now you may not agree with his economic policies, but he is not advocating for a one-world government. If people were to actually fact-check what he advocates for, they would see that the quote-unquote new world order he has advocated for is simply nothing more than government regulation, and an increase in multilateralism so that the United States will stop being the world's leading superpower. There is no proof whatsoever that he is trying to destroy the world and enslave us all. It is all just conspiracy fear-mongering to paint him as some kind of international threat who needs to be stopped. And to the right wing, he is simply nothing more than a scapegoat for their failures. Never mind the fact that many conservative causes and politicians also receive fundings from the Koch brothers, who are both richer and way more powerful than someone like George Soros can ever hope to be. In the 2018 American midterms, the Koch brothers had spent an estimated of $400 million on helping Republican candidates win. And there are plenty of other examples of them funding anti-liberal and pro-conservative causes that will be linked in the description. When rich conservatives like the Koch brothers decide to fund political causes that they agree with, no one bats an eye. But when a rich progressive like George Soros decides to back Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump or fund a social justice movement in the West, suddenly he is considered a tyrant and an anti-Western criminal who wants to destroy the world, and he must be stopped at all costs. That is the selectiveness of the right wing when it comes to billionaires funding political causes. And I honestly find that disturbing. Because not only do the right hate him for his politics, some of them feel so threatened by him to the point of being radicalized to wanting to kill him. There was one incident of a far-right militia in New Mexico called the United Constitutional Patriots who were arrested and investigated by the FBI for training to assassinate George Soros. And I'm also sure that I don't need to mention the incident last year when a far-right terrorist tried to mail a bomb to George and a handful of Democrat figures in the United States. The conspiracies surrounding this man have contributed to political radicalization on the right, and is probably going to lead to even more people being radicalized on the right. This is the reason why these conspiracy theories surrounding him are not only stupid but dangerous. George Soros is not some evil sinister figure out to destroy the world. He is simply a billionaire who funds progressive movements because he agrees with their politics. You may not like the guy for funding people to the left of you, but he has every right to fund political groups that he wants to, just as much as right-wing billionaires like the Koch brothers do. If people on the right have no issue with people on their side receiving funds from the Koch brothers, then they are in no position to complain about people on the left receiving funds from someone like George Soros. Anyways, in conclusion, those are all of the claims surrounding George Soros that I felt like countering in this video. I didn't even bother going into other accusations, such as the claim that he's a Satanist, or a Nazi, or a pedophile, or the claims that he is trying to destroy the West through open borders, because they would be a complete waste of time. And I would probably just end up repeating myself a dozen times by repeatedly stating that there's no evidence. I only wanted to focus on the main accusations that are made against the guy to smear him as evil. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.